Thank you, Jerry. All right, so I love what he said about pay attention to the process that we're going to talk about, because whether you're using the app or whether you're someone who says, I don't want to use the app, but I want to be a part of the program. I want to be a part of this thing that we're doing that's focused on reaching people. The process really is the same. You know, the app simply is something that takes advantage of the technology that we all have in our pockets that can help us be more consistent with things simply because it's right there with us. It'll bark at us and remind us to do certain things if we allow it to. So that's the benefit, the real benefit to the app. But the process is very much going to be the same thing. And so the app is called the Sow Evangelism app. And the idea behind the sow is this principle of sowing and reaping that we do find in God's Word. And so there's multiple places in Scripture that really talk about this, you know, of what you sow, you reap. And the idea is for this is specifically within evangelism and spiritual things, to be sowing spiritual seed, to be sowing movement through prayer, through acts that you do towards people with the idea of evangelism in mind, to invite God into the process. And honestly, in some ways, to take the pressure off me of feeling like I have to do such a good job of presenting the gospel to this person that it's going to convince them that they need to do it. Now, we want to be confident in sharing it, but ultimately we know if the Lord isn't working in this person's life, then I shouldn't be able to talk them into coming to Christ. It needs to be a work of God. So there's a basic principle here when we think about sowing that we find in Matthew 13:23. And Jesus says, "But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown." And so this parable of the seed and the sower that Jesus communicates, one of the main takeaways of this for us is that not all soil is equal. Meaning some people, the Lord is at work more in their life for them to be someone who would be spiritually productive. And some people, the soil is less prepared for that. I grew up in farming communities in Southern Illinois, and so if the soil isn't right, work on the soil, okay? Cultivate the soil, do things to the soil, bring in some fertilizer, get it where it can be more productive. And so the idea here is through both prayer and through other acts that we'll talk about that are going to be part of this, the principles of the app, is to work on the soil. We want to sow seed and we want to have good soil. So the idea behind the app, we're going to see 4 different things here that the app primarily does. And the first one says it keeps track of who you're praying for, their prayer concerns, and the barriers that are keeping them from church. Now, this is not a revolutionary principle with an app. Any type of prayer journal does the same basic things, right? You've got a prayer list. I can track what are the prayer concerns I have for these people. How am I praying for them? And this one specifically, and this may be a little different than if you've done prayer journaling in the past, keep track of barriers that are keeping them from coming to church. So I want to reiterate this as we talk about what this app and really this program is. This is evangelistic prayer. The idea for the people on this prayer list that we need to be thinking about these are people that I know that are in my community, in my life, in my circle, that are lost people. And, maybe it's local. I know on my list, I've also got people that are not local that are on my prayer list. I've got family members that, live across the United States that are on my prayer list. And so they're not local. But who are the people within my sphere of influence in some way that are lost that I'm praying for? And so I would encourage you, as you think about the prayer app, think about this as an evangelistic prayer tool. This is an evangelism program more than just prayer in general. So first, it keeps track of the people we're praying for. Secondly, this is where the real benefit of an app comes in, is it reminds you to pray for and reach out to the people around you. It reminds you. That's the benefit to the app. Now, I don't know about you, but this is both my best friend and my worst enemy at times. There are times when mostly I have gone in intentionally and turned off notifications for most of the apps that I have on my phone because I don't like them interrupting me. There are times when I have turned off the email notifications for my work email on my phone. Shh, don't tell IBSA. Because, yeah, we got that on tape. That's exactly right. Because, you just, you don't always want it, but that's also the power of this. With something that I want the notification to, anyone who's ever tried to get healthier knows that there is benefit to having someone who's accountable with that, who's going to say, hey, have you worked out? How's your eating going? Or whatever that thing is. And so it's going to help you be intentional about that. And so that's the benefit of the app. You can have notifications, and we'll talk about that. It's also going to give you some daily scriptures with commentary. That's really a side thing. That's not the primary goal. Most of you, if you use apps on your phone, you may already have a Bible app that's going to give you daily scriptures to read and try to keep you in the Word. But this will also do that in a small way. And then lastly, it's going to track your time and show how many seeds you've sown. We'll talk about what seeds are, but it is going to track how much you're praying. You'll see a dashboard there. You'll be able to collectively see how much my church has been praying on this app. And so there's some both accountability and encouragement. Okay, for that. It's encouraging if we are praying to say, oh, I've been praying a lot for lost people. My church has been praying a lot. So these are the basics that this will do. And so think about this systematically, even if you choose to use the book. These are the kind of things that we'll want to do. This is the plan that we're entering into, and this is the benefit of it. So, this is what it would look like. This is an app, so the way that you get this, and this, I'll make mention, this is something that IBSA partners with an evangelistic organization that Scott Harris has connections with, a good friend who does this work, has developed this, paid for the app. We provide this for any church that wants to enter into this program for free. There is a cost, and the network is absorbing this cost to make this tool available to churches. You would download it on your app store, whether you're an Apple or an Android user. If you're using something else other than those two, A, I'm not quite sure what it is, and B, I don't know how to use those things. And so, but either one of these, it will install. So if you were to, this is how you would find it, right? Go to your app store, search SOW, So Evangelism. If it pops up on the listing, So Evangelism, it has a little green John Reed, that's the name of the person who developed the app, and that's a little blue picture with the handspring, that's the right thing. You would download it and install it. And then for churches to use it, you have to have a code. So once it's downloaded, installed, and opened, and maybe you're going to do this, maybe if you choose to do it right now, that's totally fine. Feel free if you want to do it. Open up your app store, download it, and just kind of walk through it right now. And if you have questions, we can feel free to answer those questions. But I do know we're recording this. The presentation is going to be part of that. So there'll be help available from the church with this as well. And if there's technical difficulties that maybe the church can't help with, contact IBSA and we'll get you in touch with the right person that can help you with those issues. But you would download it, and then you have to enter in the church code because churches have to be signed up. Chatham's church code, I didn't get it in time to put it on the slide, but it is 976019. If you're taking notes and you want to write that down, 976019. 976019. I feel like I'm doing a radio commercial. That's 976019. And once you enter in the church code, really all you need is a name, an email address, and then you'll create your own password, that church code, and then it'll be entered in. You'll have an account registered with the church's account. Now, if you're doing this in real time, you might notice that it'll ask you the first question once you're in to select a group. Okay, the app is set up where some churches choose to do this, some churches don't. Some churches choose to enroll their people like from their typical subsets of group. And so maybe it's a Sunday school or a Bible study class. And they'll say, oh, you're enrolled, and why don't you just say you're in, this class? And they'll have those preset up. Your church right now just has one general group. And so everyone in the church will be pooled into the same group, and it's just called general. So you would select that and hit next on there, and then you're going to be in. Now, at that point, you're going to immediately be asked to do the thing that makes the app beneficial and work. You're going to be asked to enter guests. These are your prayer list people. You guessed. It'll ask you to enter your first guest at that point. So you can see how this works. And I would say, once again, if you say, well, who should I put in here? Lost people that you know. And so maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a grandchild, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's someone that you believe is lost, right? You're not sure. You're developing a relationship with them. You go in and you buy your big swig from them, every morning, or your coffee at the gas station on your way to work, or it's the waitress at the cafe, or whatever it may be. This is a person that I think this person is lost, and I'm wanting to pray for them. I'm wanting to learn about them. Enter whoever that person is. This is a person that you should be thinking about adding to your prayer list. So our example that we're walking through, you can see here the guest name says Casey Scott. This is our fictitious guest that we're going to pray for. And so you would enter in your guest's name. And then this is where we get specific, and this is where it really becomes beneficial. It's going to give you a list of possible ways to pray for this person. So you're going to have about 10 different options that you can select, one or more. You can pick more than one for this person. And you'll see a list of things like pray for my family. So how should I pray for Casey? Well, Casey, I know Casey has family issues that Casey has shared with me. Pray for my friend. Casey's concerned about a friend. And oftentimes you think, this isn't necessarily about Casey being lost. But the idea here is, and this is the way I very much view this from my own experience, especially even. I shared with the earlier group, when I first started out in ministry, I was a bivocational pastor in the Mount Vernon area in Southern Illinois. And so I worked, my day job was driving a bread truck for Wonder Bread. And I drove a sales route. And my sales route went from Mount Vernon to Centralia to Germantown to all these, Clinton County area, if you're familiar with that area, these little places up, Effingham, Vandalia. It had a large sales route. And my days, 5 days a week, involved going into gas stations and restaurants and Walmart and IGA and, these grocery stores, and talking to receiving clerks or cooks or these people and fulfilling orders and taking in product, right? Taking in racks of Wonder Bread. And oftentimes you see the same people 2 to 3 days a week, and you develop relationships with these people. And I had the greatest opportunity to invest in people, lost people, in that job that I've probably ever had in ministry was during that season of my life. Now, what I often did was, I would often find myself presented with opportunities long before I ever had the opportunity to share the gospel to pray with them or to tell them I was going to pray for them about some specific things in their life that they would share with me. And so maybe it was a health issue and they would be concerned of, I've got a test coming up and I'm concerned about the results. And people will just share stuff with you sometimes, right? I mean, you know that. Maybe you're one of those people that attracts people who just open up. My sister-in-law, goodness gracious, she can be in line at Walmart with a total stranger and they will just share their life story with her. She's just one of those people. But you'll have people like this, right? And so maybe it's pray for my health, or I've got family issues and they'll share with you, or finances, or marriage, or whatever it may be. There's a list of things. The idea is I'm going to pray for that because what I want to do is I'm going to pray that God would reveal Himself to them and make Himself known through this way that they're concerned about, through this anxiety they have or this trouble that they have. And God, act on this on behalf of Casey, because I want you more than anything to make yourself known to her, because I know that the family issue or the health issue or the finances is not her greatest need. Her greatest need is salvation in Jesus Christ. Her greatest need is a relationship with you. And when you act in this way, make yourself known to draw yourself to her. And God, I'm asking, set you up, right? I'm giving you prayer requests. Show yourself, because I want you to incrementally draw yourself closer to her and draw her closer to you. So you're going to pray that He would make Himself known to this person you're praying for in these specific ways, and that it would break down barriers. It would help them see that He is real and He is what their ultimate need is. Now, you've got a list that you can select more than one of. But let's say, there's something more specific about any of these, or something that's not even on the list. The bottom thing on the options there is other, and you can fill in the blank. And you can just type it in right there on your phone, whatever you want to pray for that person for, and it will save it in their profile to remind you to pray for them. So that's the first thing. Pray for, you enter a person, you put down prayer concerns for them. And then here's kind of where it goes next, right? So next, if you choose to, you can have a picture of that person if you'd like the visual reminder to pray for. Casey, maybe you've got a picture of this person because it's family or friend or something already in your phone, and you can drop that in there. You could take a picture right through the app of them if it's somebody you have a relationship with, if that felt normal. You could do that. But then the next thing that is, and this is where it shifts, it has a very evangelistic focus, even more than just the prayer concerns, is the barriers. So you're going to pray for a prayer concern that they've probably shared with you or you're aware of in some way for God to make Himself known. But then secondly, what are the barriers that you're aware of that keep this person from church? Because this is a lost person. We're assuming they're probably not a regular in church. What is it that is keeping them from church? Maybe you know this right now. Maybe you don't. Maybe they haven't shared it with you. If they haven't, you could skip this, and you can always go back in later and you can enter this at a person once it becomes known to you. But if you know it right now, you can already enter this in. It's going to give you about 8 to 10 options here, or you can go other and put in something specific, and it's going to give you the choices. Work gets in the way. Maybe this is somebody that it's work, or they've shared with you and said, Sunday is my only day off. And I just, I want to go to the lake. I want to do whatever I want to do. I got out of the habit of going. No animosity, no real reason. You know what? I used to go. I just quit going, and I couldn't tell you why. Haven't been in years. I'd go if my husband would come with me, right? I'd go if my wife would come with me. My spouse won't come. So there are several of these. There are options of, maybe they say everyone at church is a hypocrite. There's an option for that, okay? Because we've heard that before. Whether it's real or not, right, that's a perceived reason. In some cases, I had a bad experience at church. That's an option on here. I just don't have any interest in it. That's an option on here. So select an option or more than one that they share with you, and then record that. So that's going to be, and in your book, if you do a physical book, you're going to have the option right with these same recommendations for you, just to kind of help you know how to pray for people. But what's a prayer request that they've given you, and if you know it, why they don't come to church. When you think about attending church, what are the barriers that prevent you from coming? So if this is a person where you've talked to about church already, they've probably shared something with you. You probably know. All right, so once you've got those entered, that's ultimately it. Once you got your first person entered, now they've got a prayer card entered in the list. That's your first person. And so they'll have a little prayer card profile that's part of the app, and it's going to show you multiple things. First, it's going to show you some information about this person. And so you don't have to remember it. You don't have to go back and find it where you wrote it down. It's going to be right there every time you open the app. And it's going to remind you about Casey. And it's going to say, I'm praying for Casey's health. I'm praying for Casey's marriage. Casey doesn't come to church because A, I know it's her only day off, and B, she's had a bad experience in the past with church. So I'm going to take these things to God and ask God to be at work in these situations and these barriers to move Casey closer to you. Then there's going to be these other things up here that it tracks. And so you see how long you've prayed for that person. So you can see, this would be it, right? A cumulative time. And this is cumulative time. So if you've been praying for Casey for a year, it's going to have a year worth of how long you've been praying for Casey. It's going to have number of intentional acts of kindness, this little red heart that says 1 IAK. We're going to talk about what that means here in just a minute. And how many seeds you've planted. So that little green up there that says 210 seeds, we'll explain what that, I'll go ahead and explain what that means here in just a second. Prayer concerns at the bottom and barriers. So the seeds sown really are, so this is where the app is taking advantage of kind of what they call in the app world of gamification. I know I asked in the earlier session, Duolingo is an app that helps people learn foreign languages, and they use what's called gamification. And they use little things that kind of, what you do in the app brings up a score, registers a score and tries to make it more fun for you to be involved in it in some way, or has a score that gives you a little incentive. The seed sown somewhat is this. It's going to track with a number how many seeds sown. And seeds sown are things like when you pray for somebody, you're sowing a seed. When you add somebody's name, it's recorded, it's giving a number score to that thing, and it's keeping track of that. When you add a person into the list, when you put a new prayer request in for that person, when you put a new prayer concern, a barrier, and that you find out something and you put that in there. Every time you pray, open the app and pray, it's going to increase that score. So the idea is it's tracking seed sown. And ultimately what it's wanting to do is and I have to somebody asked me this question and I didn't know the answer. It's wanting to get you praying for that person enough and learning and investing in that person enough, both through prayer and reaching out to them, to get it to a point where you consider yourself, I really have the right to invite that person to church or to this revival. And until I've done that, I haven't done enough to prepare the ground. I haven't really been taking this person to the Lord. And so it kind of wants to get you to that point. Now, I know that's arbitrary. What's the point? How much is enough? That's not the goal. The goal is there some really investment? And that's what it wants to encourage you to do with this person. To say, I've invested enough in prayer where, you know what, I should ask this person. I'm going to trust that God is at work because I've been at work. I've been doing what I can do, and I'm going to trust that God's going to do what only He can do in this. So that's the basics of a prayer card. You've entered a guest, we've entered information about them, now I've got a prayer card. Let me come back to this one because, let me deal with it because it was on the earlier card. Select IAKs. So what you'll see, let me go back here, is you're going to see on someone's card here, if you've got their card open, it says IAK submitted and submit IAK. IAKs in the app are what's known as intentional acts of kindness. Now, the idea behind this is to be praying for people 100%, because if God's not at work, this person is never going to come to Christ. The Lord has to be at work, and I'm going to ask Him to go to work. But I also need to be at work doing some things to reach out to this person, because what does Paul say about us? He says we are ambassadors for Christ, right? We're the ones who actually make a physical connection. We go before Him as His representatives. And so as a representative, I'm expected to be doing some things that help this person see my life and see Christ in my life, and for that to be something appealing and to have a relationship, and they see Him through me. So IAKs are a way to keep that connection going with someone. So it gives you, once again, a list of possible ways to do intentional acts of kindness, which are ultimately ideas of cultivating the ground that the gospel is going to be shared in. I can make a phone call to this person. I can call and check on them. I can send them a message, right? If I've been praying for a specific health issue and I've got this person's phone number, it's great to send them a text and say, hey, I've been praying for, or on the day of the surgery. I can think of a couple of people I'm praying for this next week that I know have got something going on. Send them a text that day and say, praying for you today as you go into this. Or give them a call and say, hey, I was praying for you. How did it go? So send a card, right? Maybe it's just dropping them a card and checking on them. Being willing to pray with the guest, that person. So once again, when I was a Bivo pastor, I had the opportunity oftentimes to pray with someone. I had developed a relationship, and They trusted me enough for me to be able to stand in the back room of IGA and pray with the receiving clerk who didn't know Christ about a health issue or a family concern or a work concern that they may have had, just because I developed that kind of relationship. If I've had that opportunity, that's an IAK. Hearing their story. If I've talking to them and say, boy, you said you've been burnt by church before. I'm not trying to overcome that. Just tell me a little more about that. I'd love to hear what your experience was. Inviting them to church, going through a tract with them, a gospel tract, sharing your testimony with them, or taking them to breakfast or lunch. So these are options there. So when it says you're going to be encouraged to do IAKs, this is also part of your card, and this is something that it's tracking. How often have I done these things? And so the idea would be, if I've called Casey or sent Casey a text or talked to, prayed with Casey or heard her story, then I'm going to go into my app and I'm going to click this little Submit IAK button, which is going to give us this screen, and I'm going to select that and say, I sent a text, and it's going to record that. So it's just going to keep track of this so we can see how much we're investing towards this person. And the idea isn't, it's the encouragement and the accountability to do it. Something that's just there. If I do it and don't enter in it, that's okay. But the idea is let's have some accountability and put them in here, because A, it's going to help me be more accountable and remind me, but B, it's also going to collectively pool into the church's numbers, and we can see how much we have been doing as a body towards these same things. So these are all activities that move people closer to God. Okay. So before we get into the basics of using it, any questions to this point that maybe have come into your mind? Going once? Twice? All right. I've done an amazing job presenting this. There's no questions. Okay. So how do you use the app once it's set up? Now that's putting one person in. That's the process. I can do this at any time for more people. So I could do this at any time and I don't have this on here, but if you would be able to see this is my main screen, right, of the app when it's open. I could scroll down here and see the guests that I have. And then if I go to the end of my list and I do this, hit the plus button, now I could do that process all over again. And I could enter another guest, and I could enter another guest, and I could enter another guest. It was asked in the earlier session, is there a limit? I mean, do I get 25 and then I got to start taking people out? Not that I am aware of. So feel free to just continually add people. I don't know that anyone has informed me that they have hit a limit on people that they can add. So once you have your list in, the way that the app will work is, by default, it's going to be set up to deliver you 3 notifications a day to pray, as long as you have notifications allowed on this app. If you don't have notifications allowed on it, it's not going to be nearly as effective. So I would encourage you to keep the notifications allowed. It will, by default, give you a pop-up notification on your phone to pray for your list at 10 a.m., at 2 p.m., and 7 p.m. Now, if 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 7 p.m. aren't great times for you, I would suggest you go into the settings in the app, and you can do that by the little hamburger menu, the little 3 lines in the upper left corner of the app. You're going to see, open up your full menu, go to settings, and you can adjust those notification times. And you can say, no, 8:24 a.m. works much better for me than 10 a.m. and I want to set that first one for that. Or I only want to, 2 notification times is just what's going to work for me, so that's what I want to set. So you delete 1 and just change the 2. So you can do that. Jerry had mentioned earlier that if it pops up, at 10 is the time I want it, but today 10 isn't working well for me and I just need to wait, you can delay it right there on the app and it'll give you another one in 15 minutes or whatever to come back to it. So the idea is keep the notifications on and adjust them as much as possible to get them to work for your schedule so it works well for you on a regular basis. So what's going to happen is, when the basics of the app, it'll give you a notification. You click on the notification, and it's going to open the app here in the screen. And you're going to be right here prepared to pray. Now, if you choose to just do it at some other time, because you don't just have to pray 3 times a day for the people on your list. You could pray 4 or 5. So you could choose to do it anytime you wanted, and you would just open the app and you would go here to this thing that says Daily Scriptures. And it's a nice scene. It's got a cross. It's got a person kneeling with a sunset in the background. And you could press that, and it's going to take you to this exact same screen right here. It'll take you to this place to pray, to where you're prepared to pray for the day. So what's the pray screen look like? This is what it looks like. Picture at the top. It's going to have a scripture, 1 verse, and a slight bit of commentary that's in here. And the idea behind this is, once again, this is a prayer app. This is not a Bible reading app. And so the intent of this really is just to present you with a brief bit of scripture to help prepare your heart and mind to pray. So the scriptures that are selected are those that, are thinking about God's work in people's lives, because you're about to pray for God to work in people's lives. So it's just something very, very brief there that kind of helps center you. And then when you're ready to start, you would press the pray button at the bottom. And what that would do is, that's going to then begin to move you forward. So a timer is going to pop up at the bottom of the screen that you can see there in the green bar. It's going to start tracking how long you're praying. At the top, you'll see stop, which is if you needed to stop praying at any time, that's what you'll do. You'll hit stop. The idea would be work through your whole list and then hit stop. But you can do stop. And then you see the little speaker icon. It's default, the app is set up to play a little bit of soft music in the background. It's instrumental music. If you don't want that or don't like that, you can simply push that little speaker button, and it'll mute the music. And I believe it saves that setting as well. So that's where you begin. Read through the scripture, read through the commentary, center yourself, and then you simply start swiping left, and it's going to take you through. Let's see if I've got a slide that shows what that looks like. I don't have one for that. But what it's going to do is it's going to bring up a shortened version of that guest card, and it'll have the picture, if you've got it, at the top, their name, and the prayer concerns. And it's just going to present you with those prayer concerns that you have entered, those prayer concerns, the barriers through the card, and you just pray for the person on your list, and then you swipe left again, and it's going to take you to the next person on your list. Pray for them, swipe left, and it's just you cycle through that way. So it's really, really simple. It'll present the updated options of how you've said you want to be praying for that person. And then you work your way all the way through your list. And when you get to the end of the list, you'll actually find that at the end of the list, you also have your pastors listed there. And so I think I heard Jerry say, and there's only two spots initially to put that in. And so right now it is Scott and Aaron. Okay, so that's who's in there right now. So you can pray for more of your pastors and staff. They would appreciate that. But right now, those are the two names that are in there as well. And those will show up on your list every time. And so asking you to pray for your pastors as well. So that's the basics of working through that. When you're done, you're going to hit stop, and it's going to tell you how long you prayed that day. It's just going to give you a little update. So this, that's sowing. Now, this kind of comes back to what we talked about sowing. What are the things that it encourages you to do for the lost people that are on your prayer list? It's going to encourage you to add more people. So anytime you add more people, you're sowing seeds. You're, think about that broadly as a church body. I want to contribute to that. I want to add people that we're praying for. When you add new prayer concerns and barriers, when you pray every day, when you do those intentional acts of kindness that we talked about, you send somebody a letter or a text, or you call them, or you check on them. And you don't have to share the gospel. If you share the gospel with them, that's sowing the seed. But the idea is all these things moving towards the point where you invite them to church and they can hear the gospel, or you share the gospel with them. But then there's 2 other ones on here that we haven't talked about yet, and it does give you the option to do fasting and overcoming. And so if you're a person especially who, your health allows it and you would consider fasting, it gives you the option to do that and track it within there as well. So at any time the app is open, just on that basic home screen on the app, at the bottom of that, below your guest list, you're going to see exactly what you see here. You're going to see submit fasting or submit overcoming. So let's talk about what that might look like. Most of you probably are familiar with what fasting is. Fasting would be skipping a meal is the idea here, specifically with this. But it's not just skipping a meal. It's for this purpose. It would be skipping a meal with the intention of praying through my list. I think that's kind of the way to think about that. So instead of doing my lunch today, I'm going to focus on spending a good period of time, that 20 minutes, that 30 minutes, maybe it's less, maybe it's the 15, but I'm just going to skip the meal for that. And I'm going to pray through that list, and I can record that. So I could go in afterwards, open the app, hit the fasting button down there at the bottom, and I could say, I fasted today, right? I skipped a meal today, or I fasted the entire day. I think it gives you two options, a meal or the entire day. And it just records that, that you have invested in that way. The second thing is overcoming. So what does overcoming mean? This is the way I have understood it and worked it as I've understood and used the app. I think overcoming says, if I have something I am tempted to do instead of pray, or something that I am tempted to do that I know God doesn't want me to do in my life. Instead of doing that thing, I'm going to overcome that by replacing it with praying through my list on this app. Now, I think the most practical way to think about this would be, once again, the wonderful, glorious devices that many of us have in our pockets. It's an amazing tool, right? Way more firepower in this thing, like hundreds of thousands of times, probably more than the first home computer I owned. All in your pocket. Technology is a wonderful tool and a horrible master. It's a master to too many people, but it's a great tool. How do I use it more for a tool? Oftentimes the temptation for people is to sit down and scroll. Goodness gracious, people can scroll through Facebook or scroll through Instagram or scroll through Twitter or YouTube or TikTok or whatever the app is. And the developers of those things are very, very good at getting us sucked into something to just keep swiping and burning through 20 minutes or 30 minutes of a day in a way that's unproductive. It's not necessarily horrible or sinful, but what I might choose to do is if I'm tempted to sit down and do that, and I say, you know what, I should pray instead of doing that. There's an overcoming. Instead of opening Instagram, I just opened the prayer app. And I'm going to pray that. And so you would just record that then as an overcoming. It doesn't tell you what you overcome. I just overcame something in my life. And I prayed instead of doing whatever this other thing is. You don't have to put it in. It doesn't even give you an option to put in what you overcome. But you know. And so it's overcoming the temptation and choosing to invest in prayer instead. So that's what those options look like. It gives you an encouragement, a reminder, an incentive, and a way to track doing those positive things to sow into people's lives. So that's the basics. That's really the basics of the app. It's pretty simple. It's pretty streamlined. There's not a lot of moving parts, but it's very focused on getting us praying for lost people and reaching out to them to develop a relationship towards the gospel in some way. The goal is to do that and then to invite God into that person's life on their behalf. So that's the basics of the way the app works. Now, there are the more statistical accountability side of the app, and this is the beauty of tracking it. Now, and I'll also say, this would be the downside if you choose to use the physical version, or it's just the limitation of that, right? It's not going to automatically compile your statistics of how long you've prayed and how many people you're praying into what the app is tracking. The app's going to track all of those statistics, both individually for you. You're going to get to see your own dashboard, but then you're also going to be grouped into some stats with the church. Now, here's the question. Is everything that I put in my app, does everybody else in the church see? The answer to that is no. Okay, your individual dashboard is for you only. So the church doesn't know who you're praying for. The church doesn't know specifically who says on your prayer list, I've had a bad experience with the church. They don't know that person said that. And the church doesn't know how long I specifically have prayed. But they do know how many people you have on your list, and it adds that to a total of how many people are on the church's list combined. They do know how long we collectively have prayed together as a church using the app. They do know how many acts of kindness. The church will even get to see, the pastor will actually get to see how many people maybe said, church isn't, I just don't have time for church, right? Or I'm just not interested in church, or I had a bad experience with church. They'll have a dashboard that'll show them that. They don't know which people said it or whose list those people are on, but they know collectively how many of those people there are. So what you're going to see on yours is, you'll see a little statistics there, and you could see this at any time. All right, if you're on the main home screen, there's going to be the second thing down is a circle, a green circle that says daily goal, well done. You can click on that, and it's going to bring up your own personal little dashboard. And there's 3 dashboards that you have access to. You have access to me, right? My dashboard, you can see it up here. My group and my church. Now, in Chatham's case, your group and your church is the same because we're not subdividing you into smaller groups. And so your group is your church as a whole. So you'll be able to see those 3 dashboards. So your me is going to tell you, like today, what's my cycle of praying? It'll give you a little chart with some rhythms. How long did I pray and how many times did I pray? So it's going to give you a chart like that. Who did you pray for today? It'll tell you how long you prayed for every person on your list that you prayed for today. And it'll tell you, how many guests you maybe entered an intentional act of kindness for today. So it give you some tracking on that. And then you can see collectively as a group, it's going to give you some statistics there, and all time it would say, it's going to show you a bar graph all time of the people in your group that are praying. Now you don't see who those people are, you only see you, but it's like it'll show you, I've prayed X amount, and then other people have prayed these amounts. Don't know who those people are, they're undesignated, unnamed, but it kind of shows me that. And then it's going to show you some total stats, which is what you see there for your group for the day. And then it's going to show you the same thing for your church. It's going to give you a total prayer time for your church. How long has your church prayed together? How many seeds have they sown? So those are the real basic. It's also going to show how long the pastors have been prayed for cumulatively by everyone who's together in your church. And then this would be, if you're using groups, it gives you a chart to show which groups what group's praying the most, okay, if you want to have a little competitive spirit, if you were to set up in groups, want a friendly competition there. But that's the basic dashboard for the app. Now, it also has, and Chatham hasn't set this up yet, and so they probably will want to, because I know you guys do have revival coming up. You can actually have the administrator, the pastor who's the administrator, will set up the revival date in there. And the idea here is it helps you have a dashboard to work towards that event. If we're going to have a revival, then what are we doing, right, to build towards that goal in prayer hours for lost people in our community that we want to invite, in intentional acts of kindness to help kind of prepare the ground to invite those people. So it gives you a build up towards a specific date, and it shows you, right, how many cards created, how many acts of kindness, what's our movement towards that revival. And you can see on there, it would say revival is a 4-day revival that's coming up, and they've been preparing for 63 days. So it kind of gives that additional option to say we're all going to row together towards this same thing from an evangelistic perspective. And then lastly, and so this is the benefit for pastors. And so this is just, kind of an FYI for your information. I said there's the dual benefit of this is both accountability to me as part of a larger group and just a personal accountability of, it's like when I use the Bible, the Bible app, if I'm using it for a plan, I know if I've missed days. And, I didn't read my Bible today because it's going to show me, oh, you didn't read the Bible today, and you want to go there's a personal accountability. It's going to do the same thing somewhat for prayer, right? You see how many days you've prayed in a row, how much I've been praying, and so that's helpful. But it's accountability as a group because I know how much my church is praying and I want to contribute towards that. So it helps us all be together. But there's also some real beneficial things for pastors as well, because they get to see a broad dashboard that's not detailed individual statistics about you and how much you've been praying, but it is how much we've all been praying together as a church. And they'll give you some totals for that. So I know how many members are signed up and using the app, right? The pastor would have that. He knows how many seeds they've sown, right? All those things that we said we're sowing seeds, whether it's praying for people or doing intentional acts of kindness or adding new people to my prayer list or, adding new concerns, all those things. He sees how much they've been using it. And then this is one I've heard from pastors that's actually very beneficial to them is they get a bar chart that lists out both the prayer concerns that people have and the barriers of people coming to church. And this is just, they don't know who any of these people are or who entered them, but they know that, like, if you look at this one, out of all these probably 3 to 450 different entries that they've had in that people have entered about why people that I've entered as guests in my app aren't coming to church, it's going to tell you 109 of them said, I just got out of the habit of going, and that's the most common one. 104 said, I'm not interested. I don't go to church because it just doesn't interest me. 82 said, I'm too busy. There's 110 that were other. I don't know what those other are, right? All the way down to, I don't know enough about the Bible. Now, this is pastors that I've talked to love this because they say, oftentimes we think we know in our community why people don't come to church, but we really don't know. And now this is telling us, our members say, the people in my life, here's what they're telling us of this is why we don't come. And so it can really affect the way that they think about reaching their community if we really understand that, in this case, the top reason isn't that people think that everyone in church is a hypocrite and a liar, or, I've been burned and have horrible experiences in church. The number one reason with this real church stat that was pulled is, I just got out of the habit of going. I don't have anything against the church. I just quit going at some point and I never went back. And, they're open to it because they didn't say that was the reason why they don't go is because they're not interested. They said, I just got out of the habit of going. So that can be really, really helpful to a pastor to know that type of information, as well as the other issues that are going on in people's lives that we're praying for. And so they love that statistic because it really helps them understand their community much, much better. So that's a pastor's snapshot that they get on like a dashboard they can visit on their computer. Once again, doesn't give them specific information about you, but it does give them a lot of good cumulative totals about the church. It also tells them, hey, this is what my church has been doing. Not what you've been doing, but collectively the church. These are the ways they've been reaching out to people. This is how much they've been praying. This is how many days of fasting there have been, how many people that are taking part in that. Don't know who those people are, but they know. So it gives them these basic statistics towards this. And this is one of the things that we've heard from pastors as well that have used this, of how encouraging this is to say, to log in and go, man, my people are praying. We're asking them to pray, and I'm seeing, we've got hundreds of cumulative hours for people praying for the lost. They're praying for the lost. And I know that every time they do that, they're also praying for me when they go through that prayer list. And so it's an encouragement to see where we're at. Or it can also be a subtle reminder of, we've really got to invest in prayer because we say we want to see people come to Christ, but we're not doing the groundwork in prayer that it's really going to take to see a move of God in our community. So this is the basics of the way the app works. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Jerry, I'm going to pass it back to you.